7 surprising things seniors often enjoy more after 70. There is something about getting older that nobody talks about enough. People often tell us what we might lose after 70: strength, speed, energy, certain responsibilities, or the ability to do things the way we once did. But there is another side to aging that deserves just as much attention. Sometimes, getting older gives you something back. It gives you time, it gives you perspective, and for many people, it creates a new appreciation for ordinary moments that once seemed too small to notice. You may find yourself enjoying a quiet morning more than a busy day, appreciating a simple meal more than an expensive restaurant, or enjoying one meaningful conversation more than spending hours in a crowded room. These changes may seem small, but they can make life feel surprisingly rich. In this video, we are going to look at 7 surprising things many seniors discover they enjoy more after 70. And the beautiful part is, none of these things require a lot of money, great strength, or a busy social life. They are simple pleasures that may have been there all along, waiting for you to finally have the time to notice them. Before we begin, if you enjoy practical and positive conversations about healthy aging, please subscribe to Ageless Wellness TV and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. And if this video reminds you of something you have started enjoying more as you've gotten older, leave a comment below. Your experience may encourage someone else watching. Please also like this video and share it with a family member or friend who may appreciate a more positive perspective on growing older. Now, let's begin with something that many people don't appreciate until life finally slows down. Number 1. Slow, peaceful mornings. There was probably a time when mornings meant rushing, getting ready for work, getting children ready for school, catching a bus, preparing for meetings, answering phone calls, or simply trying to get through everything on the day's schedule. For decades, the morning may have started with an alarm and ended with a race against the clock. But later in life, something can change. You may wake up and realize there is nowhere you urgently need to be. You can sit for a few extra minutes, open the curtains, let the sunlight come in, make your tea or coffee slowly, listen to the birds outside. Perhaps you sit quietly and think about the day ahead instead of immediately jumping into it. For some people, that quiet morning becomes one of the most enjoyable parts of the day. And it isn't because the morning itself has changed. You have changed. You may finally have the freedom to experience a morning instead of simply trying to survive it. That peaceful beginning can become a small reminder that life doesn't always have to be rushed to be meaningful. And sometimes, after spending decades chasing the next responsibility, simply being able to say, "I have time," feels like a gift. But peaceful mornings are only the beginning. Because as life becomes less hurried, another surprising thing can happen. Simple food can start tasting better than ever. And that is where we are going next. Simple food and familiar meals. There is another quiet pleasure that many people begin to appreciate more deeply as they get older, and that is simple, familiar food. Earlier in life, meals can sometimes become about convenience. You eat quickly because you have somewhere to go. You grab something because there isn't enough time to cook. You may even spend years preparing meals mainly for other people, rather than thinking about what you personally enjoy. But later in life, your relationship with food can change. A simple meal that reminds you of home can suddenly feel much more satisfying. It might be a soup your mother used to make, a traditional family recipe, freshly prepared vegetables, a favorite piece of fruit, or a warm cup of tea in the afternoon. Nothing about the meal has to be complicated. What makes it special is often the memory attached to it. One bite can remind you of childhood. A familiar smell can take you back to a family kitchen. A particular dish may remind you of people who were once around the table. That is one of the beautiful things about familiar food. It can nourish more than the body. It can connect you with your history. And many seniors discover that they no longer need every meal to be exciting or elaborate. Sometimes, comfort becomes more valuable than novelty. You may also begin to eat more slowly, noticing the texture, the smell, and the taste instead of simply eating because it is time for lunch. There is something peaceful about preparing a meal you genuinely enjoy, sitting down without rushing, and taking your time. And this doesn't mean everyone develops the same preferences after 70. Some people love trying new foods, while others become especially attached to familiar dishes. The important thing is that food can become less about impressing people and more about enjoying the moment. And there is another thing many people begin to value more with age: conversation. Not just talking for the sake of talking, but sitting with someone and having a conversation that actually means something. A long conversation with an old friend, a story shared with a brother or sister, a phone call with a child or grandchild, or simply sitting beside someone you care about and talking about life. After years of busy schedules and constant activity, those moments can feel surprisingly precious. And sometimes, you discover that you don't need a large crowd around you. You just need the right person. That brings us to the third thing many people begin to enjoy more after 70: long, meaningful conversations. Long, meaningful conversations. As we get older, many people begin to see conversation differently. Earlier in life, being socially active can sometimes mean having a busy calendar, attending events, meeting lots of people, and constantly staying connected. But with age, the number of conversations may become less important than the quality of them. You may find yourself enjoying a quiet conversation with one person much more than being surrounded by a large group. Perhaps you sit with an old friend and talk about the years you have shared. Maybe you speak with your daughter or son about something that has been on your mind. Or perhaps a grandchild asks you a simple question, and suddenly you find yourself telling a story from decades ago. These conversations can become more meaningful because you have lived enough life to understand that every story carries something with it. You don't always need to fill the silence. You don't have to impress anyone. You can simply listen, remember, laugh, and share. And sometimes, the most valuable conversation isn't even about something important. It might be remembering a funny family moment, discussing an old song, talking about a neighbor, or laughing about something that happened years ago. Those ordinary conversations can become precious because they create connection. Many people also discover that they become more comfortable being themselves. There may be less desire to prove anything. You can say what you genuinely think, listen to another person's experience, and allow the conversation to unfold naturally. And there is something else that can happen. You may begin to realize that your stories matter. The experiences you collected over decades are part of your family's history. A story about your first job, your childhood home, raising children, meeting your spouse, overcoming a difficult period, or even making a mistake can teach younger people something they cannot learn from a textbook. So don't assume that your stories are too old to matter. Someone may be waiting to hear them. And meaningful conversation doesn't always require someone sitting beside you. A simple phone call can turn an ordinary afternoon into a memorable one. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing a familiar voice say, "How are you doing?" That small connection can mean more than we realize. But meaningful conversations are not the only thing that can become more enjoyable with age. There is another pleasure that often becomes easier to notice when life becomes quieter. Nature, the sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of sunlight on your face, a slow walk through a garden, leaves moving in the wind, or simply sitting outside and watching the world go by. For many people, these moments once seemed ordinary. After 70, they may feel completely different, and sometimes you don't need to go anywhere special to experience them. You just need to slow down enough to notice what has been around you all along. Let's talk about that next. Being in nature. There is a reason a quiet walk can sometimes feel better than a busy afternoon. When life is moving quickly, we often look at nature without really seeing it. You may walk past trees without noticing their leaves. That simple process can remind you that not everything valuable has to happen without stopping to appreciate. But perhaps one of the most beautiful things about getting older is rediscovering interests that were much more noticeable for many seniors. Being outdoors becomes a simple source of pleasure. It might be sitting in a garden early in the morning, taking a gentle walk around the neighborhood, feeling the sunshine, watching clouds move across the sky, or listening to birds from a nearby tree. It doesn't have to be an exercise session. It doesn't have to be a long trip. Sometimes, it is simply being outside for a few peaceful minutes. And there is something special about nature because it doesn't ask you to perform. You don't have to achieve anything. You don't have to hurry. You can simply sit, breathe, observe, and enjoy where you are. Some people also discover that gardening becomes especially rewarding later in life. Planting something small and watching it grow can create a wonderful sense of patience and connection. You water it. You care for it. You wait. Old hobbies and forgotten interests. Think about something you once loved doing. Maybe you enjoyed drawing, sewing, gardening, cooking, reading, fishing, playing an instrument, taking photographs, writing, dancing, or fixing things around the house. Then life became busy. Work needed your attention. Children needed you. Bills needed to be paid. Responsibilities kept growing. And somewhere along the way, that hobby quietly disappeared. After 70, many people find themselves returning to those forgotten interests, not because they need to become experts, not because they need to make money from them, simply because they enjoy them, and that can be surprisingly satisfying. You may discover that the hobby you abandoned decades ago still feels like part of you. Perhaps you pick up an old instrument again. You open a book and realize how much you missed reading. You plant flowers simply because you like seeing them bloom. Or you begin cooking a family recipe and remember why you enjoyed it in the first place. The beautiful thing is that there is no need to be perfect. You can do it slowly. You can make mistakes. You can learn again. And you can enjoy the process without worrying about what anyone else thinks. Sometimes, getting older doesn't mean becoming a completely different person. Sometimes, it means finally having the freedom to reconnect with the person you were before life became so busy. And that freedom leads naturally to another surprising pleasure, learning that it is okay to say no. The freedom to say no. One of the most freeing things many people discover as they get older is that they don't have to say yes to everything. For years, you may have felt responsible for keeping everyone happy. You accepted invitations even when you were tired. You agreed to things because you didn't want to disappoint someone. You may have spent years putting other people's needs before your own. But with age can come a different kind of confidence. You may begin to understand that saying no doesn't make you selfish. Sometimes, it simply means you know your limits. You don't have to attend every gathering. You don't have to accept every request. You don't have to spend your time with people who constantly drain your peace. And you don't always need a long explanation. A simple, "Thank you, but I won't be able to make it," can be enough. This doesn't mean becoming isolated or turning away from people you love. It means becoming more intentional about how you use your time. You may choose the people you genuinely enjoy being around. You may choose the activities that make you feel good. You may decide that instead of spending an entire afternoon somewhere you don't want to be, you'd rather stay home, read a book, work in your garden, listen to music, or simply rest. That choice can feel surprisingly liberating. And perhaps the greatest part is realizing that your time has value. Every hour doesn't have to be filled with an obligation. Some hours can simply belong to you. There is also a deeper lesson here. When you become comfortable saying no to what doesn't matter, you often create more space for what does matter, more time for family, more time for friends, more time for hobbies, more time for nature, and more time for yourself. But there is still one more thing that many people discover becomes much more enjoyable with age. It is something so ordinary that we often overlook it. Small moments that once seemed ordinary. A phone call from someone you love. A familiar song playing on the radio. A warm cup of tea in the afternoon. Hearing grandchildren laugh. Sitting outside while the sun begins to set. Sharing a meal with someone you care about. Or simply waking up and realizing that you have another peaceful day ahead. These moments may have seemed insignificant when life was moving quickly. But later in life, they can carry a different kind of meaning. You may begin to notice that happiness doesn't always arrive as a major event. Sometimes it quietly appears in the middle of an ordinary day. And when you stop expecting every day to be exciting, you may become better at appreciating the days that are simply peaceful, that is not giving up on life. It is learning to see value in life as it is. Because sometimes the most beautiful part of growing older isn't having more things, it is needing less to feel grateful. And that brings us to the final message of this video. The beauty of ordinary moments. Sometimes, the most beautiful part of getting older is discovering that happiness does not always have to be complicated. A peaceful morning, a warm cup of tea, a familiar song playing in the background, a phone call from someone you love, a good laugh with a friend, sitting outside and watching the sun go down. These moments may have seemed ordinary when life was busy, but with age, you may begin to notice them differently. Many people discover that a good day doesn't necessarily need to be exciting. It might simply be a day when you wake up feeling grateful, enjoy a meal you love, speak with someone who matters to you, spend a little time outdoors, and end the evening peacefully. That is still a good day. And perhaps this is one of the beautiful surprises about aging. You may begin to understand that a meaningful life is not made only from major achievements. It is also made from small moments that quietly become precious memories. A conversation you almost didn't have, a family meal, a song that takes you back to another time, the laughter of a grandchild, a garden you have watched grow, a sunset you finally stopped long enough to enjoy. These moments may not look important from the outside, but they can become some of the moments you remember most. So, if you are over 70, don't measure the value of your life only by the things you can no longer do. Look at what you can still enjoy. You can still appreciate a peaceful morning. You can still enjoy food that reminds you of home. You can still have meaningful conversations. You can still enjoy nature, return to an old hobby, protect your peace, and find happiness in simple things. And if you have an older parent, relative, friend, or neighbor, remember this too. They may not always need something expensive. Sometimes your time is the greatest gift. A phone call, a visit, a conversation. Sitting together over a cup of tea. Those simple moments can mean more than you realize. Aging isn't only a story about losing parts of your younger life. For many people, it can also become a story about discovering what truly matters. You may have less interest in rushing, less interest in impressing people, less need to say yes to everything. But you may have a greater appreciation for peace, connection, memories, nature, and the people who genuinely matter. And perhaps that is the beautiful surprise nobody prepared you for. Sometimes, getting older doesn't make ordinary moments less valuable. It teaches you how valuable they were all along. If this video gave you a more positive perspective on aging, share it with someone you care about. And if you enjoyed this conversation, like this video and subscribe to Ageless Wellness TV for more practical and encouraging content about living well as we grow older. Until next time, remember this: your life doesn't have to be busy to be beautiful. Sometimes, the quietest chapters hold some of the most meaningful moments.